Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Dr. Amy Grimm, who is a veterinarian, former medical director, certified success and well-being coach, speaker, fellow podcast host, and the founder of Daring DVM Coaching, where she helps veterinary professionals and other high achievers thrive professionally and personally without burning out or compromising their values, which I think sounds wonderful. So, Amy, thank you so much, for being here with us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Crystal, for having me. I'm super excited to talk about burnout with you. It's one of my little passion projects.
Yes, I think that we could both probably talk about burnout for hours. And I found you because I got a newsletter. I was reading through a newsletter, and you were highlighted in that newsletter. And I was like, okay, I got to check her out. Checked out your website, kind of LinkedIn stalked you and reached out. Said burnout is such a big topic. It's so important, and you have a unique lens of how you like to look at burnout. And I think that if you don't mind, we can kind of go back in time and just paint the picture of what led you to this point today of discovering coaching, wanting to be a coach, and specifically working on burnout?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question because I don't think anybody ever gets into veterinary medicine thinking that they're going to end up coaching people one day. That was like the opposite direction of where my brain was. So I was one of those kids who just always knew that they wanted to be a vet, and I have no idea why. I suspect I really liked animals, and one of my parents was probably like, you should do this thing, and it kind of stuck. So that was really my focus all throughout school, high school, competing for grades and getting those volunteer hours and getting into vet school. Part of the challenge that I faced is I was born and raised in South Africa, and there you use your high school grades to get into veterinary school, and you go straight into a 7-year program. And I moved here with my parents after I'd turned 18 and started college. So I had a lot of catch up to do when it came to getting those types of volunteer hours, experience, letters of recommendation. And I think that definitely fed into the sort of high achiever personality that a lot of us veterinarians have, where we're just pushing ourselves constantly. We're always trying to compete, whether that be actually getting into vet school or surprise, when you get in there, the competition doesn't end. Now it's scholarships and residencies and internships and everything else. And I think just having those sort of narratives be present in our lives as children as we grow into adults really makes us vulnerable to experiencing burnout. And at least that was my own personal experience. So I graduated with the hopes and dreams of a naive new grad who was going to go in and save all the animals and have this amazing career. And pretty quickly, I found myself struggling with things that I hadn't necessarily anticipated as being challenges in the job. So what do you do when a client cannot afford the treatment that you recommend, or when you're having a difficult conversation that nobody's really ever taught you how to navigate? How do you manage tension and conflict, not just in the exam room, but also, with your team? And I found myself sort of floundering and not having the best of skills. And this led me down a path which I think a lot of other veterinarians can identify with, which is it's got to be this hospital or this team or this particular person. So obviously I'm going to change jobs and then everything will be better. And there's the honeymoon phase, and it's better for a while.
Yeah. The grass is greener, we hope.
Yes, yeah. And sure, in some situations, yes, it can be, but I think more often than not, we can find ourselves in the same situations because we are living out those same patterns without any new tools or coping skills. And I was sort of reaching that point as an associate. And at the same time, the hospital I was working for, which was part of a small group of hospitals, was then acquired by a corporation. And the owner stuck with the main hospital to be the medical director there. And then the little satellite hospitals, they each needed their own person. And since I was the primary vet at one of these practices, I was offered the opportunity to become a medical director. And honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. I had thought maybe business ownership would be a way for me to not feel as burned out, as crazy as that sounds. But I was trying to think of how can I get out of the problems that I'm currently facing as an associate and give my problems somewhere else to go. So I was curious about it, and I thought, okay, well, it's not my money that I'm learning on, it's somebody else's. So sure, like how terrible can this be? And stepped into that role and actually really enjoyed it. I really was surprised because I didn't think I would like working with people and management as much. And yes, it was in a different situation than when I was an associate being yelled at in the exam room about prices. But I think part of that also had to do with I was now able to help set the vision and tone for the hospital and offer support to my team in ways that I didn't necessarily experience when I was in their position. And it opened up this whole world to me of like, oh, there's actual like courses and things you can do to learn about these problems, how to manage conflict, how to actually deal with the emotional turmoil that we feel. I had heard of compassion fatigue, but never actually thought about it as applicable to myself because like it never happens to you, right? That's somebody else's problem. And through taking those kinds of continuing education courses, I really just expanded my love for helping the people alongside the animals. And I loved that job. I really did. And I was sad to leave, but I got myself a boyfriend and then moved to go be with him. This was during COVID. Now he's my fiance. And I had to say goodbye to that wonderful little hospital and team and step back into an associate position at another hospital, which the owner there, fantastic person, really great medicine, but it was like all that stuff that I hadn't dealt with in my previous role as an associate suddenly came rushing back. And I was like, oh, WTF, like, what now? Mm-hmm. And that is really what catapulted me into what I do today, because I felt like I was falling back into these old patterns. I didn't know how to manage it. I was drawing upon some of the experiences that I had had before and tools that I had learned in a medical director capacity, but couldn't quite apply them to being an associate. And I just felt myself spinning my wheels, feeling stuck, being really disappointed. And eventually I shifted down to part-time just so that I could take a little bit of a breather and decide what it was that I wanted to do next. And I really had no idea. I looked at several different avenues, and it was completely by mistake that I even stumbled upon coaching and what it was. I had never really heard of it or appreciated it before. And this is something that you and I have talked about before, is that we're just in this bubble of like the hard sciences and the way things should be and facts and all of that. So anything to do with more of that psychology or coaching or what we would think of as soft sciences, it just sounded kind of crazy and woo-woo to me. And I was like, no way that's ever going to work. But I stumbled upon a podcast for lawyers and was listening to that. And I was like, man, this stuff is useful. And that's really what set me down that trajectory of, okay, I want to get a coach for myself and I want to improve my own work-life balance and I want to be able to practice veterinary medicine in a way that I love. And then also, oh my goodness, I also want to bring this to other veterinarians. And that's now expanded to all, like high achieving professionals. And I just keep thinking about how lucky I am that I didn't completely push that aside and just decide that, it was too weird. I didn't understand it. Going back to that sense of woo that we like to talk about. And I would say I was very lucky in how I came to do what I do today, because that's not something I could have ever predicted as an undergrad gunning for vet school.
I think it's so important for people to hear that part of your journey. For those who know my story, they've heard I had a similar transition where I was also the hard science person, gung-ho on the whole pre-vet, pre-med route. And when I went through my own kind of quarter life crisis of, well, I'm not going to do vet med, now what? Just being very lost and having, I had exhausted all the other options, like of trying different common pathways that we kind of hit our head against that wall really hard. And I went to therapy really as a tremendous skeptic, but just kind of with no other option. Like, I've tried everything. I don't even know what to do next. Just kind of out of resignation, I guess I'll try this therapy thing, but I think it's woo. I think it's crap. And then going and discovering that it was exactly the opposite, which was very illuminating. And it wasn't right away. I mean, I was slow to warm up to it. I was skeptical. I was kind of guarded. But the transformation was so profound in what I experienced in therapy. And I think there are a lot of parallels between therapy and coaching, that I then wanted to become a therapist. Like, it was so wild. I was like, I need to know everything that they know. What does that therapist know? How is she doing this? Because it seems so subtle. That's why I think we call it soft, because it's not obvious. It's not like you're doing organic chemistry. There's something more subtle, and there is more of an art to it. But it's learnable. That's what I think is cool. And I also think that coaching, it is becoming much more mainstream and a much less woo, especially in like places like Palo Alto and Silicon Valley. Coaching is amazing and huge in those organizations like Google, Facebook, right? Like, everybody has a coach. And you think about sports teams, like coaching there makes complete sense. We've heard of coaching, teaching skills, helping people navigate what they want to do, what goals they want to set, how they want to move forward. So I think when we frame it that way, people warm up to it a little bit more. I think it was more the life coaching where people are like, is this like woo, like guiding me on my life journey? And I think that's kind of where I got the flavor of woo.
Yes.
I love how you bring in, for those listening that may have been like us, skeptics. It might be like, this sounds fluffy, this sounds woo. Yeah, we get it, right? With you. And if there's a little kernel of curiosity, like we had, it might be worth sticking your pinky toe in the waters of coaching, because it's really like, there's very low risk, right? It just costs you a little bit of money, a little bit of time. And you can see, is this transformative process really worth it or not? Like, does it work for you or not? It's pretty low, I think, low risk to try it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth trying out. And also, it's not wrong to have some skepticism going into it, because unlike therapy, which is a protected profession, anybody can call themselves a life coach, which comes with good things and bad things, because we don't have as many regulations in how we can work with people. But then also, there are some other things out there, like one of my guilty pleasures that Ty, my partner, and we do is we like to watch those really trashy dating reality shows. Yeah, so like Love is Blind. And we're currently watching season 2 of the UK.
I'm watching it too right now.
Oh my goodness. The guy that says he's a life coach and listens to his spleen. And I'm like, oh my goodness, bro. That is not what the spleen does. And like,
this is what gives a bad name. And I think for those listening, why don't we just put in this with them? For those of us, I mean, pretty much anybody in medicine, we're going to care about things being reputable and evidence-based, right?
Yes.
And I think that's also, we're going to get into a little bit more of like how you deepened your coaching knowledge for certain reasons. But I would say for those listening, if you're like, well, how do I know if this person is reputable? You can go through the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, and many people get certified through that. So that's one just easy way. If you want to check credentials or see if they have that ICF approved kind of stamp of approval, that's just one way to go. You can also find out, like, who did they get their coach training by, and research that organization and see if they're legit or not. Like, formulate your opinion, but ask about their credentials and their background, their training. Do you have anything you want to add to that? Like how you might recommend that somebody vets a person?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is building relationships. So really someone that you can trust and with whom you feel comfortable, because you guys are going to be talking about a lot of different things, and you can't be coached if you don't feel safe in that space. And then there are a lot of different certifications out there. I think that it can be difficult because there are so many. And for me, I am not ICF certified. I went a different route, but then that comes with its own pros and cons. So one, it was a quicker certification process for me and really dove deep into the mindset, which I love. I think that's such an important part of like incorporating these positive psychology tools and being able to help people reframe things. And yet, this is something that you've already kind of alluded to. I felt stuck in some of my coaching with clients because mindset work is not enough. And it was really important to me to learn tools that actually had some base in trauma-informed care and ways of creating safety within the body, because so often, especially as veterinarians or other hard science people, we're stuck in our head a lot and we think we can outthink everything. And sometimes that can, in and of itself, be a type of freeze response where our body is just in the state of inaction, but our brain is just spinning and spinning. And a lot of times you cannot outthink your problems. You actually have to get in touch with what's going on at a deeper level. So another thing I would say is look for people with different types of certifications that can bring you things from different realms of, psychology or neuroscience and different tools, because for some people, great, all they need is mindset work. And for other people, they need a completely different set of tools and skills in order to move forward in their life. I definitely think the coach-client relationship is the most important thing. But yeah, if you're discovering someone on Netflix who uses their spleen for intuition, then it's probably not the best starting point. But who knows? Maybe one day I'll work with that person and have my mind blown.
I was laughing right along with you. I think when I saw it, I was like, this is hilarious. So I want to just piggyback on what you're saying with like trauma-informed care. And for those listening, you're kind of like, I don't know, this is a lot of jargon. We don't know what you're talking about. I guess a simple way to put it is that it's also very similar in therapy. I think most of us in the vet med space, we probably enter into something in a very cerebral way. Hey, therapist coach, here's my list of all the things I don't like about my life or that I'm frustrated with or I'm stressed about. I'm going to fix all these things. Here's my checklist. Let's go through it. Cool.
And here's all my self-awareness about those things that I'm going to tell you about that I've done already.
So very cerebral, because we're good at that. I mean, veterinary professionals have proven that their brain is like a very, very, complex, strong machine. And so we tend to use it a lot because it's gotten us really far, right? But sometimes the thinking that got us here won't get us there to some other place we want to be, which is different than here. And bringing in some other modalities, like some of the trauma-informed modalities, might be more what we call somatic, like working with your body. And I will tell you, back from my therapeutic journey, I hated it when my therapist was like, well, let's try something new. And I was like, no. I was very resistant, or even like creative expression, like, let's draw. And I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not in kindergarten. I'm a grown woman. But note that resistance, there might be something interesting there, right? And what the heck? Why not just try it out? Because sometimes there is something that gets unlocked when we use a different part of ourselves to deepen understanding. Like, what does the deeper body say? What's being felt? The brain is trying to make up stories about it, like blah blah blah. Why am I feeling this feeling in my body? The sensation. But what if we just stop with the felt sensation for a minute? Or if we use creative expression, this weird stuff comes out, and just be with that. So I think that there's kind of a letting go, dropping some of that control, dropping having to know and figure it all out and be curious again, kind of like that beginner's child mind, and relaxing into a space and letting stuff just kind of magically emerge. I think that was a lot of what I experienced in therapy was the letting go and the softening. It's like, I was kind of a robot human. I thought it was like Peter Pan, that kind of story where you're like, you go from the wooden object to a real boy, like flesh and blood of what does it mean to be embodied again? And that's what I thought was so cool about the work that you're doing, that you realized through your own coaching that you wanted something deeper, because the clients you're working with, you could see like stuff like compassion fatigue coming up or maybe secondary trauma. And you're like, ooh, we can't talk our way out of this. We need something more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think those tools, I mean, selfishly, they make a huge difference for me too, right? Like, and just being able to experience that myself has also really helped me connect on a deeper level with others, because sometimes when you're stuck in your head, you truly don't know. And just the amount of compassion that I now have for myself and being able to ask myself, okay, what is it that I really need right now? And then being able to offer that to the people with whom I work and helping them see, what is it that they really need? Because a lot of times you think you just need like extra hours in the day, right? Like more time to do something, when really, like, girl, you're hangry. You need a snack. You need to step outside into the sunshine. You need to move your body. Like, let's start talking about some of those things. And yes, it can be difficult to sometimes incorporate into a fixed schedule like we have in vet med. We have some control over it, but not always. And also, shit happens. Emergencies come in through the door. But even just creating these little micro moments where maybe you can do a little grounding practice while you're at your desk, some breathing. One thing that I really love, because I do a lot of surgery, is really creating a moment of presence when I'm washing my hands and like feeling the soap, the scrub brush, the smell, the temperature of the water, like just really trying to bring myself into that present moment and connect with my body, because our brains, they can always like go to the past or go to the future and get caught up in a whole bunch of things. But this is now. And being able to bring little things like that into your life, I think, is so healing, just because of the awareness that it creates and the space that it creates for you to care for yourself, really in the most basic sense.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of why I think this will really resonate with those who are listening who love animals. What do we love so much about animals? Think about when your dog, your cat, or bird or tortoise or whatever comes to you, right? And you get to pet them and touch them and look at them. It's the same thing you described as washing your hands. It zooms you immediately to the present. You're not future tripping. You're not ruminating on the past. You're just absorbed in the moment with your awesome animal. I think the same is true for nature. Many people in vet med love nature. Like, that is where you go to recharge, to feel whole again. Also, your senses are just taking it all in. You hear stuff, you see stuff, you smell stuff, you feel it. That's an embodiment, right? You're here right now. Mm. And I think that's a real gift. To be present is a gift. There's something about that, right? So I love, how you bring all that together in the coaching that you do. And since we're kind of like, I guess we're getting a little aspirational here, I wanted to ask you about the magic fairy wand question. If you had that magic wand and you could wave it around and change anything about the vet med profession, or keep certain things like forever, boom, that will stay, or I'd love to change this. What would you do with that wand?
Yeah, that is such a great question. Before I answer that, I just want to point out something that you said about the animals and, how we pet them or connect with nature. And this is one of the things why I love nervous system training so much. And I highly recommend that you work with somebody who can help you with somatics, because like when you're petting your animal, that is neuroception, right? That's your nervous system communicating with the nervous system of another. And when you're connecting to your environment, that's exteroception, like bringing in all of these external cues. And when you're in your present moment in your body, that's interoception, all of your thoughts and feelings. And there are actual scientific explanations behind these things, and there are peer-reviewed research articles and all kinds of things. So it's not woo. Like, I can't hammer that enough. And that's why when you said that, I was like, okay, I have to bring that point home.
I think that's really important.
Oh, yes, but yeah, moving on to Magic Wand, let me refocus here because let me tell you, I would wave a lot of wands.
It's a big question.
Yeah. I think really for me, and this is based off, I'd say, my own experience and also with a lot of things that I see in other veterinarians and probably high achievers in general, is that if I could wave a wand and change one thing, it would be about the culture and the perception of our own self-worth and how we view productivity.
Mhm.
Because so often we might not consciously realize that we do this, but on an unconscious level, we are measuring our value by how much we do, how long we work, how perfectly we serve clients. And that creates a lot of internal stress. And when you're existing in these high levels of chronic stress forever and ever without knowing how to cope with that or reset, that's how you end up burning out. So I would wave my wand and create a profession where our boundaries are just respected and we have strong support systems, and things like caring for yourself and taking care of your own well-being are praised and celebrated in a way that I think we're moving towards, but we're not quite there yet. And I think, like, I mean, we're so compassionate and we're so driven, and those are absolutely things that we should keep. I wouldn't want that to just disappear, but it's about us learning to care deeply, not just for our animals or our clients or each other. It's really learning to care deeply for ourselves, because that kind of compassion we bring is our superpower, right? We just need to protect it. And I think that's really the most important part.
So good. So that kind of touches on, like, since that magic wand has not fully, come to fruition yet, burnout is here. It does exist. So I'd love for you to share with the listeners how you personally, like, on we can look it up in a dictionary all day long, Wikipedia, but let's set that aside and just go with your personal definition of burnout. And what are some of the signs you're looking for if someone contacts you and you're like, I suspect there might be some burnout here. What are you looking for?
Yeah. That's another great question, because I think so often we're just fed the World Health Organization's definition, and those things are certainly true, like increased cynicism, negativity, detachment from what you're doing. But when I'm looking at it from a nervous system perspective and as a coach, to me, burnout is a nervous system problem. It's not just about chronic unmanaged work stress. It's like when exhaustion becomes your new baseline. And burnout happens when your body has been stuck in the survival mode for so long, because you're constantly just pushing through, you're developing coping strategies, you're holding it all together. And we get stuck in this sympathetic overdrive, and we end up getting stuck there, which is a form of dysregulation. And that's what burns us out, because we're coping and coping and coping up here, never resetting to normal. And eventually you just crash and burn. It's like when your phone battery is dying and suddenly you can't have all the tabs open or be, like downloading things or FaceTiming or whatever it is. You just have to start shutting them down and maybe even going to airplane mode. Like, that is what I think of when I think of burnout from a nervous system perspective. So when people are talking to me, it's things like, okay, maybe you get a lot of sleep, but you still feel really tired. Maybe you rest, but you still feel tired. You're disconnected from things you used to love, not just your passion for veterinary medicine, but things that you do in your personal time, or relationships that are, they're no longer as fulfilling, and you don't know why. You just sense that something's wrong. And it's like you're running on fumes, you're going through the motions. People describe it as this like tired but wired kind of feeling, like you're exhausted but anxious. Those are the kinds of things that I most often hear about. And that's because we've just been running at a deficit for so long, and it's just constantly triggering our little threat response system. And over time, that just wears us down. And that's why we get fatigued, emotionally fatigued, mentally fatigued, physically fatigued. It's this state of just being in a reduced state of energy. And no matter how hard you work or what you're doing, it just doesn't feel fulfilling or satisfying anymore. But here you are, just still trudging along.
I think you describe it so well. It makes it so much more personal when you put it that way, because we all see the different assessments, like the Maslach's burnout inventory and whatnot, and it's rather clinical. But when you just say, "Hey, this is really relatable. You feel wired, but you're tired. You sleep, but you don't feel refreshed. The things you used to love don't light you up anymore, right? You feel like you're on an endless treadmill going nowhere." We're all like, "Yeah, me, 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 me." Now the good news is we could do something about it. So do you want to talk about, we don't have time for all of the things today, right? Obviously, this is why coaching exists, because it's a process tailored to each individual and what they would need. But how about if you share maybe your top 2 or 3, strategies like to use when it comes to dealing with burnout?
Yeah. So, I mean, the very biggest thing, like the most important thing I would say, and this is once again because I'm coming from more of this like somatic nervous system kind of background, is learning how to identify when you are tipping over into more of that sympathetic overdrive. And I really want to make this clear, like being sympathetically activated is not a bad thing. Like that's actually a biological response, and we're supposed to do that. And once we have gotten through whatever we think the threat is, we're supposed to then relax and go back into that parasympathetic state. But many times we're being triggered by the stresses that we face all the time. And it's like we don't know where the off button is. So we just get stuck there in the on position. So the biggest thing is creating awareness. Like, what does it feel like to me when I'm becoming stressed? What kind of thoughts pop up? Do I feel anxious? What kind of body sensations do I have? Tightness, tension? Do I get migraines? Do I suddenly have unexplained back pain that didn't used to be there? Learning what those are, what these personal indicators are for you, and then learning real-time tools that you can use quickly, like, yes, meditation is wonderful. Going on a walk is wonderful, but it's not always something you can do in the middle of a chaotic day. So learning tools like breath work, understanding why that works, because once again, we're sciencey people. So we want to know, like, how is that actually changing my body's response? How does it relate to my heart rate variability? And why do I care about that? And why does that put me into a parasympathetic state? All of those kinds of things, I think, are so helpful for people who have these science type minds, and really helps you understand, one, why you're doing what you're doing, and then also gives you the tools to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then tied into it, it comes back to that mindset work, really redefining what success means to you. So not through external validation, but really connecting to your core values and who you are as a human being, like what your identity is. Like being a veterinarian is a label. It's something that you do. It is not your identity. And if you only think of yourself as a veterinarian, you can run into trouble, because then it's going to be much more difficult to disentangle your self-worth from your job and what you're able to achieve or do there. So really being able to define what success is for you and how it's meaningful for you, and what it means to be a human being whose worth is inherent, no matter what you do at work or what you do in your personal life. I would say those, like the nervous system combined with the mindset, are the 2 biggest things. And if I could throw in a third one for funsies, that would be everybody's favorite word, which is boundaries. It's the word that everybody loves to hate. But seriously, like, we're often not taught how to set boundaries or how to honor them. And especially in a profession where we are majority female, we're coming with these narratives, implicit, explicit stories about how we should behave or how we should say yes or we should appease. And that can make boundary setting very difficult. And sometimes we think of it as selfish or we're letting the team down. So some people are lucky. They know no means no and they can say that. But for other people, no means guilt. No means worrying about if I made the right decision. No means staying up at night scared of maybe a professional or personal judgment or repercussion or something. And it's about learning how to set boundaries confidently and actually tie them to your values so that you don't feel those worries, those uncertainties, that guilt, and really learning how to care for yourself. So I know that was a lot of explanation, but those are I would say my three biggest things.
Well, of course, you can see how, like in a coaching conversation, each one of those could be its own individual session, like helping a person first just recognize their triggers. How do you know you're kind of tiptoeing or showing signs that you may be getting to that, hyper aroused place of, oh gosh, I'm over the top. And then what are some strategies you can use? Everybody's toolbox is a little different. What would work for you in the moment versus longer term? I think that aspect of knowing how to bring yourself back down to a more parasympathetic state of rest and digest and that relaxation is really important. I think that all the different aspects that you point out, like the mindset that then follows that of tying it to your values and dealing with the emotions that come up when you make these changes, like when you set a boundary. Yeah, you might feel uncomfortable for a while, but practice does help with that, the exposure to doing something different. Eventually, it does get more comfortable. And also, I think when people see results, they're like, it's kind of worth it, because when we recover from burnout, we're much less irritable. And that's a nice thing, to feel like you enjoy being around people again, to enjoy life again. It really is just so worth it. And I appreciate so much the work that you are doing. I think it's just compelling that you came to this so organically and you've continued to deepen your practice and deepen your education following what you're seeing, that you wanted to have more tools in order to help people that were experiencing things that are maybe a little more than the average bear. And definitely vet med is a complicated profession. So I just appreciate so much the work you do and your willingness to podcast today and share some of that message. And I hope that people will connect with you. So please, let's tell them, for those listening, they're like, hey, I have some burnout I want to work on. Amy, how do they find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been delightful to have this conversation with you today. And yeah, I feel like we could go on for hours, but in the meantime, if you are curious about coaching or even just learning a little bit more about what I do, please come to my website. That's daringdvm.com. You can also find out, more about working with me. I am super excited because I'm starting a group program, and one of my goals is to really bring in that sense of community, because so many of us are trying to do things on our own. And I think healing really comes with support and building that community. So that's one cool thing you can find there. There's also free resources. So one that's really popular is the Burnout Fix, which kind of goes into some of the science behind what Crystal and I were sharing today. So you can get that there, or I can leave a link for you in the show notes. And then, email me. I will give my email to Crystal. Come find me on Instagram at Daring DVM, especially if you like weird memes about overachieving.
Also, you're very easy. Hold on, I'll put it all in the show notes. And when I read, it was a email like hello. So you're very accessible and very warm and friendly and easy to meet. So I'd say anybody that's interested, all those avenues will be in the show notes. So they're easy to find. And Amy, I just really appreciate you being on so much. It's been really fun today.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It was so fun for me too.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.